Well, it was not a good Sunday for the Jets across the pond as gangrene fell to the Vikings 23-17 in London. So let's talk about the Jets' performance in Week 5. We're going to do it with a host for WFAN who has a lot to say. That is Danielle McCartan, who joins me now. Danielle, how are you doing? How's your football Sunday going? I know it was a long one because you had to get up early and watch these Jets.
You know what? I kind of like the little reprieve. You get to debrief a little bit, you get to watch the Mets for a little bit, and then split screen it with the Giants. So I'm okay. I know the Jets are not so okay, though. I know we'll
No,
talk about that.
they are not. They are not okay at all, Danielle. So we got to start with the Jets offense, which struggled for the second week in a row here. 3 interceptions for Aaron Rodgers in this one. He was sacked 3 times. So what's wrong with the gangrene offense right now?
Isn't that the million-dollar question, right? I mean, listen, Dexter, if I knew that answer, I'd be collecting checks addressed to me with the Jets logo at the top of them. So I don't know what's wrong, but I'm going to make some conjectures here. Conjectures here. To me, I think most important, in his career, I looked, Aaron Rodgers averages just about 8 air yards per pass attempt. And in today's loss, it was 3.8, which is like half. And last week, it was just 2.4 air yards per pass. So, I mean, you aren't going to win games like that where the defense can kind of just load up in the box and not have to worry about that throw downfield. And that's probably my guess as to why the ground game isn't all that effective either. And B, it seems entirely too predictive. Pass, run, punt. I mean, come on. And along those same vein, like if and when the Jets get a trip to the red zone, it's like, okay, where's Allen Lazard? There, okay, boom, that's where it's gonna go. So I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but I think on the one touchdown pass to Lazard, he was double covered for sure. I think Garrett Wilson kind of slipped under and behind the defender and would have been open for a front corner touchdown catch. He was open. So I got to look back at that, but it's just too predictable and no adjustments. I mean, think about today. How the Vikings like to set up and wander around defensively and last minute get in place. I mean, the Jets had one up tempo snap and they tried it once and it was a success. So where was it all game? And more importantly, why did it disappear directly after that? So there's a lot to point your finger on. Aaron Rodgers did not have a good game today as well. I mean, as you said, so there's a lot there. So again, if I knew any one single answer and one way to fix it, man, I'd be reporting to Florham Park, one Jets drive every day for work moving forward. So I don't know, but that's my best guess.
No, you're right. You would be getting checks. I was just out here trying to get you paid, Danielle. That's all. Just trying to see if I can get you paid with some answers there. Now, considering how bad things have been offensively for Gangrene, the reports that Devonte Adams would be interested in being traded to the Jets came about this week. Is it imperative that the team finds a way to acquire the Raiders wideout?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't push all of the picks to, in the center here, but listen, you need to do whatever it takes within reason to get a guy that can make you a more competitive team. You need to do what it takes to put the most competitive team out there. That's your job. That's your responsibility. And will Adams help? No doubt. Definitely no doubt. Will Adams be the savior for this team? No, and I would say don't expect it. But what you would be getting is a guy who still suits up each and every week. The best ability is availability, right? Who on career average can get you 64 yards per game. A guy who can, most important, come in mid-season with an already established identity and chemistry with Rodgers and this offense. So when you look at their top three, Wilson, Lazard, Adams, that sounds a hell of a lot better than Wilson, Lazard, Williams. And I can't watch any more of Mike Williams. On the final play of the game, how can Stephon Gilmore know your route better than you? Williams didn't even turn his head around to try to catch that ball. And I don't want to hear any miscommunication. It's through week 5. Any miscommunication should be out the window by now. I'm tired of seeing Mike Williams. Bring in Devonte Adams. Let's see if they can do better that way.
All right, you're all in on the Devonte Adams upgrade. We'll see if that move comes about. Maybe Joe Douglas was on the phone with the Raiders already after the game ended in London. We shall see. Got to talk to you about head coach Robert Saleh. Now, you were very vocal on social media about Saleh. The Jets are now 20-36 with Saleh as head coach. So, two-part question for me here. Is he on the hot seat right now? And what would you like to see from Saleh moving forward, assuming he keeps his job?
Yeah, I mean, a hot seat. I mean, the seat is like boiling for me right now. I mean, he was on my hot seat at the end of last season. But listen, all week we heard from the Jets about how they wanted to, have a fast start. And okay, that was the goal all week. That's what we've been hearing all week. Today, okay, they opened the game with 4 straight 3-and-outs. How is that for fast? Fast. I don't understand how a whole week of preparation can go into that. And I don't know, I might be mistaken. I'd never played NFL football, but aren't the first couple of plays kind of pre-scripted? So what is happening from a game planning standpoint, Coach Saleh? That needs to improve. And I need to see Robert Saleh put down the pom-poms and pick up an iPad or something. I need him to be less of an Aaron Rodgers fanboy. I need to see him interacting with his players as coach, not as equal, not as peer, and something that I've been publicly on him again since at least Thanksgiving of last year when I first noticed it, throughout the offseason when they were on the Hard Knocks and all that. And, an example from today, he was patting his offensive line on the chest, on the back, as they ran off the field after Rodgers' second interception of the game in the first quarter. I mean, why are you doing that? What kind of praise are you offering these guys? And also, too, I need to see more urgency from him and from this team. And he said, Robert Saleh said at the half, I was standing right here and I was getting ready to run. I went running at halftime. He said at the half, we have to keep doing what we're doing and we'll be all right. And I was like, what? A delayed game on a punt before the 2-minute warning, a woefully inept offense that before that touchdown pass to Lazard, and they had just registered 2 first downs, before that drive, 2 first downs, 5 total rushing yards. That's one hand, you can count that. 63 passing yards, 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick six, and a collective 6 penalties, which to me all the time fall on the coach, except for pass interference, but that's another whole story. But, I mean, what is he talking about? And then after the game, Robert Saleh doubles down on this laissez-faire type attitude, and he said, it's early. We're 5 games in. We'd like to be better. We have a long way to go. And I'm sitting there like, listening on my phone as I'm cleaning up the kitchen here. I'm like, what? 30% of the season is gone, and the Jets are 2-3 with the first ballot Hall of Famer at quarterback. Something's not computing to me. And this, again, all from a guy you mentioned, this from a guy whose team loses based on his winning percentage. The team loses 65% of the games that it steps on the field for. I did the math. So what is he talking about? I can't take it anymore. And as I'm sitting here watching the ineptitude going on my TV, I'm thinking, Bill Belichick has to be doing the same. Mike Vrabel has to be sitting on his couch doing the same thing as I am right now. Why not just pick up the phone and dial? And I know for a fact the Jets flirted with Mike Vrabel for a day this offseason. And I'm just wondering, why didn't they just bring him in? I mean, at this point, it's time. I mean, it's time. The how do I say it? The honeymoon period, the true colors are showing for Robert Saleh. It's time. The Jets need someone else in there other than a cheerleader and a guy that's trying to be all the players' friends. They need a coach, and they need to be coached hard, and they need this is too good. This roster is too good to let it go to waste. And this week, we talked last week about how the Jets were winning games despite the head coach. Aaron Rodgers unfortunately had a terrible game today, and he couldn't play well enough to overcome this coaching staff. I'm sorry.
Woo! Danielle is fired up about this one. If you've been following Danielle on Twitter, you'd have seen some of this, but we have to let Danielle get the thoughts out there. What I will say, Danielle, is he said they'll be fine. It's still early. As you mentioned, 30% of the season done. It's getting late early. Can say that at least. It's getting late early for sure. Right?
That's right.
So, there we go. All right, so one bright spot that we saw for the Jets against the Vikings was wideout Garrett Wilson. He caught 13 balls for 101 yards. Now, it's been a slow start to the season for Wilson. So when you saw his performance today, are he and Aaron Rodgers finally getting on the same page?
I'm not sure, right? And I know Garrett Wilson was asked something to that effect after the game today, and his, he had more to say, but he started with "I don't know," and that to me, I didn't care what the rest of whatever else he said. He said "I don't know," and that's a big problem to have going into week 6. It's getting late early, right? Yogi Berra, but. You look at today's stats and you're like, oh, yeah, it might be. But I just don't think this was a good barometer, a good litmus test, because the Vikings coming into this week were the worst pass defense in the league in terms of yards given up per game. And they gave up, prior to today, the average was 275 yards per game receiving wise. So hopefully, though, that, Garrett Wilson can kind of leverage this week, kick it into overdrive. And it's really nice that he put up those kind of numbers. But to me, it's just kind of like, okay, it doesn't tell the whole story. And you kind of have to read between the lines a little bit on that. Now, that also circles back to the fact of or the question of what is going on in practice and how can these two link up more effectively and efficiently. And not just them, it's Mike Williams for as long as he's on this roster, and it's Alan Lazard, and it's all of these guys. So I go back to the question we asked last week. What happens at these practices? Where is the accountability? And I wish I had the answer to that. Again, I'm not there in those meeting rooms. I'm not collecting a check with the Jets logo on it, although I would love to. It's just I would just take Garrett Wilson's numbers today with a little bit more context, if you will.
No, I get that. When you look at how the Vikings pass defense was, as you mentioned, giving up the most yards in the league in terms of pass defense, and then the Jets not able to get big plays, as we saw in Week 5 against the Vikings. So interesting how you look at the numbers for Garrett Wilson. Last thing for me, Danielle. Last week when we talked, you told me you were disappointed with the Jets start after 4 weeks. So where are you on this team at 2-3, and should there be any hope that Gang Green can turn things around?
I mean, if I didn't have any hope last week, it's less this week for sure. I mean, this is the same exact conversation we had last week, Dex. It's like this team is not where they're supposed to be. To turn it around, you would have to hope that they can, right? I mean, you'd hope because they've got a big game against the Bills on national TV coming up next Monday night. But in order for them to turn it around, I mean, can they? Well, I mean, not unless there's some accountability in that building from the top on down. Not unless Coach Saleh plays the role of head coach, not peer to these players, buddy to these players. Not unless Rodgers and his receivers can get on the same page. Not unless Alan Lazard starts working with the jugs machine to strengthen up those hands. Not unless Nate Hackett puts a little creativity into his game planning. And with 4, possibly 5, that Dolphins game at the end of the season, primetime games to go. I mean, this could get really ugly, and it has to turn around, right? So I'm hopeful that an extra day of rest for Aaron Rodgers with that, what he called an ankle after the game today, would be good. Time to load up for the Buffalo Bills coming to town. And the Jets, by the way, beat them at home last season with who? Like Zach Wilson and Robert Saleh. So to me, surely they could do it with Aaron Rodgers, and hopefully by this point, Devonte Adams as well. So I am hopeful the Jets can turn it around. I'm hoping they're throwing some stuff right now at each other on the plane ride home from London, and I hope that this is the catalyst, and that plane ride home is the catalyst for the Jets to just get pissed off, because there's too much of, well, we'll get them next week going on in that building right now. So yes, I'm hopeful.
Next week will be huge for the Jets. As you mentioned, they will not take care because we don't know if they won yet. They will play the Bills on Monday Night Football in primetime. We'll see how that all shakes out. That is Danielle McCartan. Check her out on WFAN. Danielle, more football to watch today with New York going on and the Giants coming up. We will talk more about that later as you will rejoin me. I'll talk to you then. Thank you.
I'll be locked in, Dex. Thanks you.